Is famous for something else, though, too. Damage is pretty much done by American aircraft, just as the Japanese admirals assumed it would be. The Battle of Leyte Gulf is famous for something else, though, too. It's considered to be the battle where the suicide attacks known as Kamikaze attacks first happen in real numbers. There may have been some early attacks earlier, and there were definitely suicide attacks with the Japanese all throughout the war, but as an organized effort unleashing trained and tactically organized for maximum effect suicide squads, you first see this at Leyte Gulf. And John Toland, in his 1970 book, The Rising Sun, chronicles one of these early famous attacks. And it's famous because the Kamikaze came in and did some damage. And I try to imagine the Americans watching this as it unfolds, trying to figure out what it is they're seeing and trying to come to grips with, are these guys deliberately trying to smash into us and take their own lives? The event happens in that one moment in time at the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Didn't we say that the enemy flotillas, enemy if you're an American, get into the backfield, right? And they're fighting with these escort carriers, and you do have the rather interesting moment where you have the super battleship Yamato for the first time in the war, I believe, firing its guns in anger. It's 18.1-inch guns, shells the size of Volkswagens at American carriers 18 or 19 miles away. Escort carriers, it must be said, they were called Jeep carriers. And then about an hour after these Japanese battleships inexplicably turn away, giving the escort carriers, after having lost a ship and others damaged, a reprieve from the governor. And then something else shows up, and Toland writes, quote, and by the way, I'm going to add the word escort carrier in front of all these ships that are escort carriers where he just gives the name. It gets confusing. Quote, for over an hour, all was quiet. Then at 10:50, General Quarters was again sounded on the 5 surviving Jeep carriers. 9 enemy planes were approaching at mast level, so low that radar had failed to pick them up. They climbed to several thousand feet as American fighters tried to intercept them. 5 Zero fighters, with bombs lashed to their wings, emerged from the milling mass and slanted down toward the Jeeps. They were led by a recently married lieutenant commander, I hope I pronounce his name correctly, Yukio Seki. 1 Zero, Toland writes, headed for the bridge of the escort carrier Kitkun Bay, its machine guns winking. Onlookers expected it to pull up. Instead, it drove into the port catwalk, exploded, and tumbled on into the sea. 2 others roared straight at the escort carrier Fanshawe Bay, also with obvious intent to crash into her, only to disintegrate at the last moment. The final 2 veered off from the heavy fire thrown up by the escort carrier White Plains. One, trailing smoke, banked toward the escort carrier St. Lo in a right turn as if intending to land. But the pilot pushed the little plane over, slamming it into the flight deck. Fires spread throughout the hangar deck, setting off a chain of violent internal explosions. After having survived the running battle unscathed, St. Lo sank. End quote. I've been fascinated by this phenomenon of the kamikaze since I first learned about him as a kid, and I know many of you have been fascinated with them too. And like me, if you've continued to read up on them, your views on them have probably changed 180 degrees too. When I was a kid, we were basically taught these were fanatic, Kool-Aid drinkers who would give their lives up without even giving it a second thought for the emperor. Very non-complicated robots. And now when you read their last letters and their diary entries, the whole time that they were training for these missions, but knowing that they were dead men walking or dead men flying or dead men piloting the human torpedo, whatever it might have been, your heart breaks in a lot of these cases. First of all, these are not your hard-bitten military men, which I found very interesting. When the program was first developed, they asked military men to volunteer. And do you know how many military men did? According to anthropologist Emiko Onuki Tierney, who wrote the fabulous book Kamikaze, Cherry Blossoms and Nationalisms, the number of hard-bitten military men that said, yeah, I'll volunteer for that suicide mission, was none. And she italicized the word none. This is a bit of a problem if you're trying to kickstart a brand new program and get people interested in it. So apparently the military just decided to then point to some people and say, okay, you're volunteering, you're volunteering, you're volunteering. And one of them was this pilot John Toland had used in his book, Yukio Seki, portrayed as this willing, ready to die for the emperor guy. Turns out not so willing. But that was not news that made it into the